Christina Henderson, it is a pleasure to have you on the Singletrack podcast today. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you, Finn. Very happy to be here.
We're excited to have you. I was telling you offline that near and dear to my heart are these sort of business type conversations on the show. It really is the genesis of Singletrack, and at times we have strayed from this narrative, but you're the executive director of the running event, and it doesn't get much more core to what we like to talk about than what you do on a daily basis. I think a lot of people who listen to this show probably have some familiarity with the running event and what you do, because I think this audience is sort of tapped in. But for anybody that isn't aware of the running event, can you speak just a little bit to the backstory of it and how it came to be?
Sure. And firstly, thank you. Talking about the running event is one of my favorite topics. So please, I tend to ramble when talking about it. So stop me
No.
and ask
There's no
questions.
such thing as rambling. No such thing as rambling on this show.
Okay, good. Well, so for anyone who isn't familiar, the running event is the business event in the running industry. So we bring in, the brands come in and exhibit, and they show future products, and the attendees are specialty retailers. So they are walking the floor, meeting with current brands, meeting with emerging brands, and seeing what they may want to sell in their store in the following year. In addition to that, we host educational sessions for retailers. So a full day of that. So, how to run a small business, marketing trends, sales strategies. It's very extensive. And then we have many events within the event. So we host a 5K race to find out who the fastest retailer is.
That's awesome.
We have, it's fun. We have parties and just networking events to encourage that connection within the industry. So that's what TRE is. And I was actually doing the math before we jumped on here because I wanted to be correct, but this will be the 17th year of the running event. So I was not around for the very first TRE, but I do know my former boss was one of the founders. And in year one, we had 12 exhibitors and 40 retailers. It took place in New York, fun fact. And this year, we will have about 315 exhibitors and 1,400 retailers in attendance. So it has grown significantly since year one.
Amazing. And I think it does go to show if you keep at something and you're consistent, you put energy into it, there can sort of be that hockey stick growth where the show has gotten to the level it's at today. I know you weren't there sort of in the founding moment of the running event, but have you learned anything in the process about what it takes to get a trade show off the ground and sort of like, what's the 0 to 1 there? Because I have to imagine in year one, even getting, 40 retailers and 12 exhibitors, that's quite a feat.
Absolutely.
So talk about that.
Sure. So I think, first of all, is there a need, right? Is there a need for a trade show? And back when the running event was formed, there was a need for a gathering place for run specialty stores. And so, four men founded the running event. The company was called Formula 4 Media, and they identified this need, this gap in the market for an event like this. That being said, it was still, I have heard the stories where, they had to beg for meetings with the various brands, and many brands said, no, we don't know you. We're not doing this in year one, but some did. And over time, you build that trust, you show the value, and you continue, something that we still do to this day is understand the need of the industry, right? Like we have to evolve with the industry and their needs to remain relevant and to remain an event that brands and retailers need to go to stay current and to understand what's happening in the industry. So, it's not one of those things that's just like put it on and they'll come. It's really understanding why they would come and, what can we provide that would give value in a brand exhibiting and a retailer in attending.
It's funny. I used to work in the software industry in a marketing capacity, and I would go to a lot of trade shows. And there are a few trade shows that come into mind where on the last day of the event, because that particular trade show had such power and influence in the industry, their sales team would be on the floor in the last 4 to 5 hours of day 3, essentially telling vendors or exhibitors, do you want to buy your spot for next year? Because if you don't buy right in this particular moment, it's going to be sold up. And I was like, I was just an attendee, kind of like, walking around, but I saw those conversations go down and I was like, wow, that is so impressive. Like the economic forces there. Has the running event reached a point where it's become pretty easy to sell, and all the, constituents that you service, that they get the value pretty clearly, and it's not as difficult as it used to be?
Thankfully, I would say yes. So, I work with some brands in, in selling them space and activations. And essentially, if you want to be sold and run specialty, you need to be at the running event.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult. It's like, if this is where you want to be sold, if you are currently sold there, if you want to grow your presence there, if you aren't currently being sold there but would like to, the running event is where you need to be. And so at the end of the day, it has become easier. But that being said, it's not that every year, certain brands may say, hey, I'm what's my ROI on this? How are you changing? How are you adapting? Like, how is next year going to be even more valuable than this previous year? Right. So it's not always as easy as like, okay, sign right here, same booth, same spot. It's how are you going to continue to bring in more retailers? How are you going to continue to bring more value to us as an exhibitor?
That's super interesting. And it makes me wonder, do a lot of your customers, do they see viable alternatives out there that are competing with, their presence at the running event? Or um, are these requests sort of being made in isolation without any, alternatives for them to turn to if, for example, the running event is somewhat similar in 2023 as it was in 2022? Not saying that it's going to be that way, but just hypothetically.
Right, right. And it's a very fair question. And currently, there isn't another trade show like the running event out there. There are other trade shows in similar industries, outdoor industry. And then there are events that are smaller, that are, more regional and hosted buyer, kind of just that connecting brands and retailers. So we are very fortunate that right now, there isn't an alternative, but we live in a digital world. There are other ways that you can meet with people and that you can make connections. That being said, I am a huge believer in the importance of in-person connection.
Yeah.
And, I think, of course, when the pandemic happened, there was a lot of fear for the trade show industry and like, oh my, like, will we ever be able to gather? Will everyone shift to just digital meetings? And I think we learned that didn't serve certainly the running industry, and I think many industries. There is a reason that you gather people, that you meet in person. Good things happen when you bring a group of people together in the same room and encourage that connection.
I couldn't agree more. And this is anecdotally, in my experience on the media side of things, the amount of progress I make on the business or in relationship building that I would make in a 3-month stretch working here from my home office, I can like verifiably make in one day attending the Western States 100 or the Javelina 100 or Hard Rock or any of these marquee events. It's amazing the magic that can still happen, the intangibles that still take place in an in-person setting. At least until now, I don't see any threats there.
Absolutely. And, I always say, people ask me like, okay, I'm going to the running event for the first time. What tips do you have? Right. And I always say, just, go to all the events, introduce yourself. You never know who you're sitting next to, like on the bus, or who you're standing behind in the coffee line, right? Like say hello, like, that might be someone that you've been trying to email for months, right? And then they just happen to be there, right? Like it is so valuable to just be in the room and, say hello and, make that connection that is hard, to just cold call someone or email someone that you don't know. But when they're in the room, you build that relationship much quicker.
I had a boss in a previous life who said that when you are paying for entrance to a trade show, you're essentially paying for serendipity, which I thought was a really great way of describing, what the customer gets in return for, having to book a hotel, a flight, spot on the floor. You're paying for a serendipity vehicle, which I think is super cool.
Okay, I love that. I'm not sure if people will see my face, but I like lit up at that comment because I just believe in that so much. Like that is what happens at trade shows, and I think at the running event specifically by design. We the venue and the events, we do them in a certain way that encourages that serendipitous moment.
For listeners and viewers that are interested in sort of the economics of how a trade show works, can you talk a little bit about what covers costs and then how you create margin in the business? Like, do ticket sales cover one part and then like vendors, exhibitors cover another part? How do you think about building the business model around that?
Sure. And so I was thinking about this question, and I've had someone explain this to me, and I'll start by saying, I think the running event is much more than this, but at its core, we are selling space, right? So we are selling space on the exhibit floor to brands. Someone put it once as that we're in the real estate business, right? Which I understand why you would say that. I think we do much more than that. We attempt to do much more with that than the running event. But at the economic level, we sell space to brands. So depending on the brand, they may buy 100 square feet. A larger brand might purchase 4,000 square feet to show their products. And so the running event this year will be 80,000 square feet of exhibit space. And so that is where most of the money is brought in. We also sell sponsorships. So brands will purchase activations on site to stand out. So to tell their story, to do branding. So, Finn, we were talking, you haven't been yet, but when you walk into the Austin Convention Center, you will see window decals, like signage, floor decals, banners, media wall, just multiple opportunities that brands purchase to tell their story. So that's another revenue stream of ours. And then, we do charge retailers to attend, although we keep that price lower in an attempt to encourage attendance and for stores to bring their team, to bring, not only the owners and managers, but also sales associates. And, we host education for all those levels to encourage that. So at its core, that's the economics of the trade show. And then, of course, we spend a lot of money on the venue and the space and, food and beverage and kind of creating that on-site experience that we want to provide for attendees and brands.
It seems to me like such an amazing business model for so many reasons. I've been in scenarios before where, you do a project for a partner, but then the terms are like net 90 or, in bad economic times, even like net 180, sometimes net 360. And you're like, wow. But like with a trade show, you're getting all of these funds up front, which I don't know, for any of the business nerds out there, it's a pretty awesome business model in my opinion.
Yeah. And well, I'll leave it there.
You talked about evolving and adapting and whether or not there's a pressure there, just like you take ownership in that responsibility, which I think is really cool. Because in a sense, even if the pressure's not there, staying ahead of things is super important. And that's how things like the running event thrive and stay relevant for years to come. How do you see the running event maintaining its relevance and its impact in the industry in future years? Because, a couple, not competitors, but phenomenons that I see as something to be aware of is like these virtual trade shows, online marketplaces. So yeah, what are your thoughts there?
So one thing that I always say to my team at the start of the year is we want the running event to be more than a trade show. And so that's why I say, at its core, the real estate business, like I understand that that is the traditional model for a trade show. But my team and the running event, we look to be much more than a trade show. We look to be much more than just some space on the floor, buy it and good luck, right? We want to be, and I think we are viewed as thought leaders in the industry. So it comes with big responsibility, but also opportunity. And so, one thing that we've really been focusing on the past couple of years is our partnerships and, partnering with organizations that share our values and share the values of the running industry. And so we partner with them. We work with them on educational sessions. Many of them have space on the floor. They host gatherings, and we work with them to disperse their mission in the industry. And so that's one way that, that's new, right? A few years ago, sure, we had some partners, but now it is a core focus of ours, and we see it as our responsibility. I'm going to back up there.
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
But yeah, so the partnerships is a way that we continue to grow, and we continue to challenge ourselves in the industry to be better and to strengthen and to grow. So that's one way. And then we are always looking for ways to innovate and be modern and fresh, right? So again, going back to that real estate metaphor, no longer is it just like buy your space. We are doing new things, one of which, Finn, I know we're going to talk about, but, we are going to live stream the running event for the first time this year. And so that's new, that's different, right? Like the running event is a B2B event by design and for a reason. It's for business to take place. But we, while thinking about how we could be more than a trade show and how we could provide more value for our exhibitors and for the industry, we had PR project approached us with this idea, and it was like, okay, this is different. This is not something we've ever done, but what if, right? What if we did this? And we kind of gave a peek into the running event to consumers and to just anyone who is unable to attend the running event in 2023.
Do you suspect that that'll be a substantial audience, or will there sort of be like a trickle effect over years? Does this year serve as sort of like just like a test case, making sure the tech works and, if there's like reporters on the ground, that works, all that kind of stuff?
So we kind of talked about this, and we said if we were going to do it, we want to do it well. So, we do not see this as a test run. We have an extraordinary lineup of guests. Many of our brands were all over this. Wow, this is a cool new opportunity. We want to be involved. So most of our larger footwear brands will be speaking on this live stream, as well as some smaller emerging brands, some of our partners, a few retailers. So I do think it will take a couple of years for that full audience to tune in or to understand why maybe they would want to. But I do think we will have maybe a smaller audience, but an engaged one this year.
It reminds me, and I don't know, So I'm a second generation Grateful Dead fan, Deadhead. My parents were big Deadheads back in the day. And one of the cool like marketing case studies from the Grateful Dead is they were very lenient with their fan base. Fans could come into these concerts and without any retribution, they could record the concert that was going on. And ironically, that was what allowed the Grateful Dead to achieve sort of mainstream prominence in the 80s and 90s, because they were just so lenient with content creation in the moment. And when I think about the running event, there is a connection here. When I think about the running event, a lot of my introduction to the running event was seeing all of these vloggers on YouTube and podcast personalities just sort of going into the trade show, creating their own content, and then spinning it out to their audiences. I guess A, is that something that you guys really encourage? And B, are there any examples of how you're going to facilitate this more in 2023?
So I would say it's more recent that is something that we would encourage, right? I feel like a few years ago, the main focus was, the brand and retail meetings, right? And that continues to be the main purpose of the running event, is to connect the brands with the buyers, and that remains. But again, the running industry is growing, it's changing, it's evolving. Content creators, that was kind of a new term not that long ago. And so it was kind of like, what are we going to do with content creators? And they want to come, and so now it is a big important piece of the running event. And my former boss, actually, he'd always say, the story of an event is created by people who aren't there. So the ones who are just tuning in and watching these stories, or they create like an idea of what the event was based on what they're seeing. And so it is very important that we have creators in there. We have people telling the story of the running event to those who are not there, chose to sit out, didn't understand the value. We want to make sure they understand they should have been there. There is this value. They could have been in the room for these serendipitous moments.
Yeah.
And so we do encourage that. And, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but we'll have Kofuzi and Tommy Runs are doing an educational session about content creation and social media that they are giving to retailers, right? So there's also that connection of like, how do run specialty retailers work with content creators, and what else can they be doing with their social media presence that again just grows the running industry in these ways that a few years ago didn't exist. So it all kind of works together.
Very cool. There's a Dylan Bowman who operates Free Trail in the trail running space. I think he also just announced that he'll be doing some sort of daily dispatch with his team from the event, which I'm very excited to follow along on as well. So it is cool to see a proliferation there. Maybe one more thing on the virtual trade show front. Like when you think about the live stream component, is that sort of a way to cover your bases there as well? Like if there were to be a theoretical, virtual trade show startup in the trail running or the running space, the live stream sort of satisfies that end?
I haven't seen it that way, but I think it could be, right? I think it does cover that. Like we were talking about during the pandemic, we were unable to hold the running event in 2020, which, was devastating at the time, but it was very scary and we didn't know what would happen. And we tried to do some virtual events and they were mildly successful, even during a time when people were craving that connection and had no other way to get together. We still struggled with attendance and just getting people to log into meetings. And so we kind of tried some variations of virtual events and it just didn't work. Like people wanted to be in person. That being said, there is a time and place for virtual and for, webinars and digital connection. And so I think we're still trying to figure out how that fits within the running event, how it is a complement to that in-person gathering. And so the live stream is a way for us to kind of test that, right? Like, how will this work? Who will tune in? What value can we continue to create with something like that?
I have to imagine that of anybody in our community, you're one of the most tapped in to maybe the answer to this following question. But, we talk on this show a lot about it. A lot of other shows talk about it. Is running growing? Is trail running growing? At what rate is it growing? Is it contracting? Are there parts of it that are growing, but parts of it that are contracting? When you think about like the general question of, the economic state of the running industry and the larger outdoor industry, are there any numbers you can point to or stories you can point to that illustrate the direction that it's going in?
Sure. And, I will say this will be my own personal thoughts on it. I do have some numbers that I think would point to growth. But I do want to say that this is coming from me as Christina. From what I see and from trends and growth that we've seen in the running event, I would say the running industry is strong. I can't speak to the numbers in terms of how many runners there are or that type of thing, but I can say that run specialty stores are doing well. They are healthy. They are thriving. We will have our largest TRE show floor by about 20% in 2023. In 2022, we had our largest by 20%. So we have taken that and we've grown it again by another 20%. And so, yes, our team works hard, and yes, they're finding new brands to exhibit. But I think that speaks to brands who have not, some of them are brand new brands, but some of them just never came to the running event before, or they weren't in the running industry before. They were serving others. And so brands are seeing opportunity in running. And so, I think that speaks to, they see potential in running. They see it as growing and booming. And so again, I don't know much more than anyone else. And I know there are varying thoughts, but I can say that, brands who have told us no in the past want to come to the running event, and they want to be sold in run specialty. They want to be seen as a running brand. Yeah. So I think that's exciting. I think that points to a healthy industry and to future growth.
20% is an amazing, growth factor. One thing I'm curious about, because I'm sure we'll talk about Switchback in a second, but does that 20% growth constitute mostly endemic running brands, or is a lot of that captured by this new expansion into the greater outdoor space?
That's a great question, and it's both. So, we launched Switchback, the outdoor component, last year. We had about 5,000 square feet of exhibitors in that space. This year, we'll have about 10,000. So we will have doubled that space on the floor. So that being said, we have about 10,000 square feet of outdoor brands and about 70,000 square feet of solely TRE. In 2019, pre-pandemic, we had our largest TRE to date, which was 55,000 square feet. So I'll say that all again. 2019, 55,000 square feet. In 2023, we'll have 70,000 of pure running brands on the floor. So yes, the outdoor component is part of it. That is part of the growth. But it's not all, it certainly isn't all of it. And there is such crossover between these outdoor and running brands as it is. It's all very confusing. Many of those brands in the Switchback space are coming because they see opportunity in run specialty as well. So yes, they want to meet with outdoor specialty stores who would attend, but they also want to talk to run specialty because of that crossover that we're seeing.
I want to talk about that crossover into outdoor in a second, because I think there's just a lot of interesting discussion to be had around like the comparison between the direction you're heading and what exists with outdoor retailer. But going back to the the state of retailers and how there's a general sense of good health there. I find that fascinating because if I recall back in like the mid 2010s, you saw all these, obituaries almost being written in like Outside Mag and Trail Runner and I Run Far about, the end of brick and mortar, and everything was going to go to Amazon and everything was going to go, purely online. What do you attribute to either the resurgence or just the fact that we were getting ahead of ourselves with our predictions that this was going to go away?
Well, I think it's similar to what we've been talking about with virtual events and in-person events. Not all retailers survive that time, and not all retailers will continue to succeed given Amazon and how the ease of online shopping. But run specialty stores especially, they have made it their model to have excellent customer service, to really be a community hub, right? They are not simply a retailer. They are creating community where they are. So they host races. They are giving back to charities. They are partnering with high schools, and they treat every person who walks in their door like family.
Yeah.
And so, when you are going to buy your next pair of shoes and you have the choice of, buying on Amazon or going back and supporting, that store who treated you so well, many people will do that. And so, by creating those experiences, they are creating loyal customers, and that's what differentiates them from those big box stores, where you're just a number, you're just a whatever. They know these people by name, they are out there supporting them. And that's why they continue to succeed.
Yeah, anecdotally here in the Salt Lake Valley, I have a few friends that work in brick and mortar, and they've all told me that in the last 5 or 10 years in particular, they have reimagined themselves as events companies. Like they sell experiences now. Like, yes, when you walk in the store, you can go in and buy shoes and you can buy nutrition and you can buy apparel, but they're really making a concerted effort almost on a daily basis to have some sort of community event attached to that transaction as well. Like maybe, if there's a local race that weekend, they have a couple YouTube films up about the event or a guest speaker. And I found that really fascinating. So maybe that's also kind of what you're talking about. That's helped the continuity there.
I haven't heard it phrased like that, kind of becoming like an event company, but that's it, right? You can't just I think there are so many parallels, but like I was saying, we can't just sell space and just think that people are going to come, right? You have the product in your store, but you have to give them a reason to come, right? You have to, and I think another one is you have to differentiate what you're selling, right? You're a specialty store. So what are you selling? What do you have in your store? What experience are you giving them that they can't go get, at the large big box store down the street, right? Like give them a reason to shop there, give them a reason to drive to your store rather than purchase online.
It's so funny, and just memories are coming to my mind right now. Like that same person will be like, Finn, we're competing with the restaurant down the street. We're competing with the local Cinemagic movie theater down the street. Like those are our competitors, not REI, not Walmart, et cetera. Like, no, we're competing with, those, experiences on, Thursday nights, Tuesday nights, Saturday nights. I thought that was so cool.
It's so true though, right? Like, I love it. I have not heard that, but I could probably guess at what retailer in Salt Lake is doing that, and it's why they're successful.
Yeah. Okay, coming back sort of to the growth question, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, and you might not even have the data, which is fine, but when you look at the growth, particularly inside the running industry, when it comes to floor space at the running event, are you able to determine like where the particular increases are coming from? Like, is it mostly apparel brands? Is it shoe brands? Is it nutrition? Is it some sort of other accessory? Do you have that data?
It's a great question. I don't have hard data. I can speak anecdotally just from, spending a lot of time with the floor plan. we see a lot of footwear. So, there has been a growth in, obviously, that drives the running industry. But, with the growth of trail running, that has brought in many new footwear brands selling trail shoes. You have recovery shoes. So that's kind of a new one as well. So like your UFOs of the world,
Yeah.
as well as comfort footwear. So, they play in that recovery space as well. And just, the same people who will purchase $175 running shoes may also purchase these comfort shoes that may not be performance, but those brands see opportunity in run specialty. So if you look at the running event floor, you'd struggle to find a footwear brand that is not represented there. So that's a big piece. Apparel has grown. I will say that. Historically, run specialty has struggled with apparel. That's not a secret. But over the past year or so, we're seeing stronger sales in apparel, and so because of that, we are seeing more apparel on the TRE trade show floor. So, athleisure type apparel as well as performance. So, like Viore is a good example. They came to the running event for the first time in 2018 in a 10 by 10, the smallest booth that we sell, and they are now one of the busiest booths on the floor every year. And so kind of competitors to Viore see opportunity. So we are seeing more apparel brands like that, like the lifestyle type apparel. There are always new nutrition brands. Technology is another one, just, certain technology that retailers would use, like, so point of sale, that type of thing. There are new and emerging brands there. Safety is another one. You see quite a few products coming out for people to run safely. There are many others, but yeah, those are the ones that come to mind and what I'm seeing that growth in.
What did you attribute the historical struggle with apparel to?
I'm not sure. I think if I had to say, I think retailers, they see their largest margin and, their highest sales for footwear. So like that was their focus. And so they weren't making that next sale for apparel. I think now we are better training staff, and we're learning, people are learning that added sale. So, hey, you bought those shoes, what socks are you going to wear? What socks have you been wearing? Like, what sports bra do you have? Just starting to take that extra step and strategically and thoughtfully selling more product, right? Not forcing it upon people, but there's a reason, we have running sports bras, and there's a reason we have why running shirts are made of a certain fabric, right? But new runners, and they may not know that, so it just requires that next step. So now I think run specialty stores are really owning that and doing that.
So, and this because I probably sent you like 50 questions in advance. I want to be respectful of your time, but I also want to make sure we get to like all of these sort of trend-based questions I had for you. There's 4 subcategories of running in particular that I wanted to float by you. One is trail running, so the growth of trail, female participation, minority representation, and then sort of like the youngest generation out there that's, getting into adulthood and exploring their habits and their trends in the sport. Maybe starting with trail. Are you seeing any particular data or any anecdotal experiences that you can speak to around like whether this category of running is growing, if it's sort of, evening out, contracting? What are your thoughts there?
This one is tough for me. You do hear differing stories. Again, from what I can say, from what I've seen in terms of like the brands that are coming to the running event and interest from retailers, I do think trail will continue to grow. And but I think we're still trying to figure out what that looks like and how how we get more people on trail. We do have quite a few. Well, I can think of one in particular, a session that we'll have at the running event about how we get kids running on trails and what does that journey look like. And I think that will be an important piece as new runners come in. Where are they running, right? Are they running on the roads, on the track, on trail? So it's a tough one. I hope it continues to grow. And I think it will. I think brands are behind it and want to see it continue to grow.
Because I think about this a lot. I live here in Salt Lake City, and you can literally walk out your door and trip onto a trail. Like it's very difficult to avoid trails in our city. And I don't know if this data exists, but I would love to see data on nationwide proximity to trail access, regardless of economic background, social class, etc. What is like the average proximity, and how does that factor into getting into this sport versus, well, I mean, everyone's got concrete next to them, so it's easy to be a road runner.
Yeah.
I would find that data to be probably pretty illuminating on the situation.
I agree. And it's not data that I have, but I bet some brands do as they're creating trail products. So it'll be interesting to see. I really hope it continues to grow, and I think it will.
Another one is female participation. So, and I should be fact checked here, but when I look at the registration lists for a lot of events in our sport, in particular, ultra trail running, it seems to be in the neighborhood of like 75-25 male female, 60-40 in some really good cases. Do you have any data you can share or stories around whether this segment of trail running is growing?
I don't. I do know that running stores focus quite a bit on the woman consumer. And I do, when we're seeing like the launch of like Lululemon and their shoe specifically for women, and I think we're going to see that from other brands as well as races, and just really focusing on women in running. So again, I can't speak. I don't have exact data.
Okay.
But I hope that's changing. I really would like to see pretty 50-50 on the start line, women and men, across the board.
Okay, another one, and I mean, I find this one super fascinating, is the relationship between brands and retailers. And I think maybe this might have been what caused all the fear back in the mid 2010s about, is this the dawn of the end for brick and mortar? Are you noticing or seeing any reports that show more or less sort of like marketing spend versus like direct to consumer among brands? Like what are you seeing there?
We really are seeing stronger collaboration between brands and retailers maybe than ever. Wow. So of course brands sell D2C, but you also see some brands pointing customers to a local running store, even if they are on their site, right? That collaboration is so important. And you see brands backing all types of events that retailers are hosting. There is space for all of it. And, I think back in, the 2010s, there was this fear that brands were just going to start selling direct and like that was going to be the way to go. But it isn't. Some brands even who went totally D2C are shifting their strategy. because there is value in selling wholesale and selling out of retailers, or selling out of retail. People walk into stores and they want to see your product. So that collaboration is strong. It's a big conversation that will happen at the running event. So if a brand is not working well with retailers, you will hear it. Like that is such a key component to a successful retailer, is having that collaboration and support from the brands.
Is there a particular data point that acts as sort of the golden rule for these brands to continue to invest in their retail relationships? Like, is it something as simple as like, we're just seeing consistent sales in this particular category, so we're going to reinvest? Or was there something more complex that they read into that makes that decision more clear?
I'm truly not sure, but I can very confidently speak to certain brands pulling back and selling in less retail, and now are back and want to sell in all run specialty stores. So like something didn't compute there, right? Okay. We have one brand who has never come to the running event because they all were always D2C. They are coming for the first time this year. I think because they want to be sold in run specialty, right? Like, so I don't have that hard data other than anecdotally, just kind of seeing the trends and patterns of that D2C model. It's limiting. You want to be omni-channel. Yes, you want to sell D2C, but you also want to be these other places. So there's strength in that. And so I don't have those hard numbers, but I've seen it over the past many years, just that fluctuation of brands, and where they choose to show up. And so they're all showing up this year. So, there's something to be said.
I mean, I personally love it. And I don't know if I've just weirdly struck gold again and again and again. And I just it's serendipitous for me, but every single time I walk into my local running store, there's always 4 or 5 tech reps there simultaneously, like either waiting in line to have a meeting with the store buyer, or they're just hanging out. And I talk to all of them because they're fun to talk to, and they compete to sell me on their product. So I don't know. I think it's cool. I love the in-person. Again, I think that's a recurring theme.
Agreed. Yeah, we got to get you to the running event because you'll just see all of those reps and people all over the place.
I am very much looking forward to going. I would be a kid in a candy store. I'd be the annoying person. You guys would be like closing down that day, and I'd still be trying to talk to everybody in the store. Anyways. Okay, you were talking earlier about the decision to sort of expand the value prop of the running event into just the more generic, wholesome outdoor space. Switchback is sort of, I think, the brand name for it. And I find this fascinating. Is there something about your core customer or the running consumer that's changing about them that prompted this decision?
Yes, that's where it came from. So we were seeing a change in consumer, right? Or maybe not a change, maybe just realizing, I'm not sure. But, the same person who was coming in to buy their road shoes, in many places were also trail running. They're also hiking, they're camping, right? And so what if retailers started evolving along with consumers, right? I think like on the business side, we've always felt the need to separate running and outdoor. Like there's the running industry and there's the outdoor industry. But I'm not sure that consumers see it that way, right? I think consumers, like, running could be part of the outdoor industry. Like, yes, like I think they deserve recognition and individuality, but the crossover is so evident, and especially with the emerging of trail running. So, that was kind of the launching pad for it. right around when we were discussing this, REI announced that running was going to be its next growth category. So, that then just backed what we were thinking. Okay, these outdoor specialty stores are also interested in running. Running stores are interested in at least trail running and possibly more than that. We were talking earlier about the strength in bringing people together, right? That's one of the biggest things. One of the biggest reasons people come to the running event, especially on the retail side, they want to talk to each other. You've got your store over here in California, your store in New York. They want to talk. They face similar challenges. They want the same things. That's why they come. And so what if we started bringing in some outdoor specialty stores and they could all learn from each other, run specialty, outdoor specialty. Then you go to the trade show floor and you see all the products that you may want to sell in your store. It just makes sense. So that's where it came from. We are taking it slowly. We're being very intentional and intentional about who we bring in, right? We're not bringing in skiing or biking. That doesn't fit what we are trying to do. But, the trail footwear, like the Arc'teryx is coming for the first time, some of the apparel, that makes sense. So, that has been our focus in year 1 and year 2.
Are you able to name any of the brands from the outdoor specific space that'll be there this year besides like Arc'teryx? And did you say Keen? Was Keen another one?
Yep. I will name a few. I'm going to leave some off, so forgive me. But you've got Arc'teryx, Keen, Adidas Terex is coming, Danner, Outdoor Research, Prana, Craft.
How about
I'm going to stop there.
How about tools like like a Coleman stove? Will we see like Coleman there, for example?
No. Okay. So we have not gone after like the tools yet. So like that camping equipment.
Yeah.
The camping equipment, the tents, you won't see that yet. It really is focusing on footwear and apparel, I would say, hosiery. So some of the like your farm to feet type of socks.
Yeah.
Maybe some new brands that people haven't heard of that I think will be pretty cool as well.
Maybe this is super specific to the trail running scene because I'm just not as tapped in or, on site for road running events. But I've always thought that the parking lots at ultra marathons sort of tell the future of sponsors that could be coming into the space, especially, for example, like all the camper vans that are in the parking lot, because people don't necessarily stay at Airbnbs or hotels almost all the time. With some exception, they're traveling from afar to the race. And so I've always felt like that particular segment of outdoor could be an amazing connection, non-endemically into trail. Like I just talked with a guy, Jeff Peltier, on the show 2 weeks ago, and one of his primary sponsors for the Moab 240 race that he did back in October was a company called Ross Monster, which makes these custom van build-outs and then rents them to people on the Front Range of Colorado. And so, yeah, maybe I'm just I'm telling you my wish list right now, but
you are on to something. I'll tell you that we did talk to some like car camping type companies who ultimately decided to not come this year. Again, it takes a little bit of time for people to trust you or understand the vision sometimes. But I do see that as a category in the future. I think it will come.
One of the last topics that I want to end on, and you've talked throughout this conversation about the importance of being a good partner. And I think there's a lot of people that listen to this show, that watch this show, that also have to be good partners in the trail running space. Maybe they're race directors that are trying to secure sponsors for next year's lineup. Maybe they're athletes trying to, work with brands to make their, races more affordable. Maybe there are operators that are listening to this and they're thinking like, how do I, get floor space at the running event in 2024? Are there any sort of universal principles about developing and maintaining a good partnership that you think this audience would stand to benefit from based on your experience?
Great question. I would say I am still learning, but we really try to listen first, right? What can the running event do to support your organization? I think that's always how we start these conversations is, help us understand your mission, who you're trying to reach. Let us figure out how we may be able to use the tools that we have, the platform that we have to thoughtfully help you, whether that's leading into the event or on site. And we're unable to do everything that we'd like to do. We have multiple partners, but we do listen and we do try to understand and create that space as best we can. So, it's not anything novel, but I do think it's easy to forget because then of course it's like, well, hey, we're going to do this for you. What are you going to do for us? Right. But it's like, that always comes after. It's like, hey, how can we support you? How can we share your message? How do we make this a mutual beneficial partnership?
Awesome. Well, Christina, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I know that this is a chaotic, hectic, but in a good way time of year for you. We're 2 or 3 weeks away from the main event. So really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. We did talk about the live stream being a new phenomenon this year. Are there any other novelties in this year's event that you want to make sure the audience is aware of, or any calls to action you have about signing up or getting in touch with you for any particular reason?
Yeah, so if anyone is already coming to the running event, there are multiple new happenings, I would say, at the event. So we just launched our TRE app, so you could download that so that you don't miss anything. There are, multiple things happening every single day. So I encourage you, go to everything. Like we were talking about, I think to start is like, go say hello, make those introductions. There are too many things to name, but the live stream, we have a pickleball court on the TRE floor. We have this area where we're taking professional headshots on the floor, multiple runs that you can take part in, parties. It is endless, but I encourage you to do it all. If you are unable to come to the running event this year, the live stream is a great opportunity to tune in and kind of get a peek into, what happens at the running event. We set up like a desk like you would see at like live from like a football game, like game day, right? Yeah. So we have that set up on the exhibit floor, with some plexi behind it. So you can kind of see the action of what's taking place at the running event. And we're going to meet with multiple brands, including Nike and Brooks and Adidas and, all these exciting brands that you'd want to hear from. If you aren't registered for the event and you are a specialty retailer, a media personnel, there's still time to do so. I think we have 2 booths remaining on the floor, so there isn't a lot of booth space, but if you are a brand, would also love to talk to you about opportunities. So like I said, I can ramble about this, but, Finn, we can talk. I would love to include my email address if anyone wants to talk to me. Yes. And yeah, it's really going to be a special event this year. Our team has poured their hearts into this. And so we're really excited to see it come to life very soon.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we will link to all of that in the show notes. And again, joy to chat with you. Thanks for doing what you do. And I am excited to attend the running event one day. I never thought that I would have that same thrilling experience of sort of like the move-in day freshman year of college, but this could be that same feeling. I'm very excited.
Well, we're excited to have you, Finn, and we got to get you down there. So yeah, let's make it happen.